Have you ever started bell pepper seeds only to end up with leggy, weak seedlings that never really produce? Or maybe you've bought transplants from the nursery and wondered why your peppers take forever to ripen, while your neighbor's plants are loaded with fruit. The truth is, growing bell peppers from seed gives you a massive head start, but only if you understand what these plants actually need during those critical first 4 months. In this video, I'm going to walk you through the complete process of growing bell peppers from seed to transplant-ready plants, covering everything from seed selection to outdoor care. Plus, stick around to the end, where I'll share a simple trick that can boost your pepper production by up to 30%. Let's get into it. Bell peppers are one of the most rewarding vegetables you can grow in your home garden. They're versatile in the kitchen, beautiful in the garden, and once you get the hang of growing them from seed, you'll never go back to buying transplants. The good news is that peppers are actually pretty forgiving plants once you understand their basic needs. So let's start by understanding how these plants grow and why timing matters so much. Here's something important to know about bell peppers. They're warm season crops that originated in Central and South America, which means they absolutely love heat. Unlike tomatoes that can tolerate a little cool weather, peppers really sulk when temperatures drop below 60 degrees Fahrenheit. They need a long growing season, typically around 90 to 120 days from transplant to harvest, depending on the variety. This is exactly why starting from seed indoors is so important, especially if you're in zones 3 through 7, where your outdoor growing season just isn't long enough to direct sow peppers and expect a decent harvest. Even in zones 8 and 9, starting indoors gives your plants a significant advantage. You're essentially buying yourself 2 to 3 months of growing time before your outdoor season even begins. Now let's talk about selecting your seeds. When you're choosing bell pepper varieties, you want to think about your climate and your goals. If you're in a shorter season area, look for varieties that mature in 70 to 80 days, like Ace, King of the North, or Early Crisp. These were bred specifically to produce in cooler, shorter seasons. If you've got a longer growing season, you can go for the larger, thicker-walled varieties like California Wonder, Big Bertha, or those gorgeous chocolate and purple varieties that take a bit longer to mature. I personally grow a mix of both. That way I'm getting early harvests while my bigger varieties are still sizing up. When you're buying seeds, fresh matters. Pepper seeds remain viable for about 2 to 3 years when stored properly, but germination rates drop significantly after that. If you've got old seeds sitting in a drawer, they might still sprout, but you'll likely see 50% germination or less. I always recommend buying from reputable seed companies and checking the Pack 4 date on the packet. One more thing on seed selection. If you're saving seeds from store-bought peppers, just know that most grocery store peppers are hybrids, meaning the seeds won't grow true to the parent plant. You might get something interesting, but don't expect an exact copy. All right, let's get these seeds started. Timing is everything here. You want to start your bell pepper seeds indoors about 8 to 10 weeks before your last expected frost date. So if your last frost is around May 15th, you're counting back and starting seeds sometime in early to mid-March. I actually start mine closer to 10 weeks out because peppers are slow germinators and slow growers compared to tomatoes. For your seed starting setup, you'll need a few things. First, containers with drainage holes. I like using cell trays. The ones with individual cells about 1.5 to 2 inches wide work great. You can also use small pots, recycled yogurt cups with holes poked in the bottom, or even soil blocks if you're into that method. Second, you need a quality seed starting mix. This is different from potting soil. Seed starting mix is finer, lighter, and designed to hold moisture while still draining well. I've had the best luck with mixes that contain peat or cocoa coir, perlite, and vermiculite. Don't use garden soil. It's too heavy and can harbor disease. Fill your containers with the moistened seed starting mix. And here's a key point. Moisten the mix before you fill your containers, not after. You want it damp, like a wrung-out sponge. If you add water after planting, you risk displacing your seeds or creating uneven moisture. Now plant your seeds about a 1/4 inch deep. I usually poke a small hole with a pencil, drop in 1 to 2 seeds per cell, and gently cover them. Don't pack the soil down hard, just a light press to ensure good seed-to-soil contact. Now here's where a lot of gardeners go wrong. Pepper seeds need warmth to germinate, and I mean real warmth. The ideal soil temperature for bell pepper germination is between 80 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit. At this temperature, you'll typically see sprouts in 7 to 14 days. But if your soil temperature drops to 70 degrees, germination can take 3 weeks or longer. Below 65 degrees, seeds may not germinate at all, or you'll get very spotty results. This is why I strongly recommend using a seedling heat mat. It's one of the best investments you can make for starting peppers and other warm season crops. Place your seed trays on the heat mat, and it'll keep the soil temperature right in that sweet spot. I leave mine on 24 hours a day until I see sprouts emerging. If you don't have a heat mat, you can place your trays on top of a refrigerator, near a water heater, or anywhere that stays consistently warm. Just check the soil temperature with a thermometer to make sure you're in the right range. While your seeds are germinating, you want to keep the soil consistently moist, but not waterlogged. I like to cover my trays with a humidity dome, or even just a sheet of plastic wrap to hold in moisture. This way you don't have to water as often and risk disturbing the seeds. Check daily and mist lightly if the surface starts to dry out. Once you see those first little sprouts pushing through, remove the cover immediately. Keeping it on too long creates a humid environment that can lead to damping off, which is a fungal disease that kills seedlings at the soil line. As soon as your seeds sprout, they need light, and lots of it. If you're relying on a windowsill, even a south-facing one, your seedlings will likely get leggy and weak. Peppers need 14 to 16 hours of strong light daily. I use a simple shop light with LED bulbs positioned about 2 to 3 inches above the seedlings. As they grow, I raise the light to maintain that distance. Keep the lights on a timer so you're consistent every day. At this stage, you can also remove the heat mat or reduce the temperature slightly. Seedlings do fine at 70 to 75 degrees once they're up and growing. Once your seedlings develop their first set of true leaves, those are the second set of leaves that look like actual pepper leaves rather than the rounded seed leaves, it's time to think about potting up. This usually happens about 3 to 4 weeks after germination. Potting up means moving your seedlings from their small starting cells into larger containers, typically 3 to 4 inch pots. Why do we do this? Because pepper roots need room to grow. If you leave them in tiny cells too long, they become root-bound, which stunts their growth and stresses the plant. When you pot up, you're giving those roots fresh soil and space to expand, which translates to stronger, healthier plants. Here's how I do it. I fill my larger pots with a good quality potting mix. This can be richer than seed starting mix since the plants are more established now. I make a hole in the center deep enough to bury the seedling up to just below its seed leaves. Peppers, like tomatoes, can develop roots along their buried stem, so planting them a bit deeper encourages a stronger root system. Gently remove the seedling from its cell by pushing up from the bottom. Try not to pull on the stem. Place it in the hole, firm the soil around it, and water it in well. After potting up, your seedlings might look a little droopy for a day or two. That's normal transplant shock. Keep them out of direct, intense light for a day. Then return them to their normal position under your grow lights. Continue watering when the top inch of soil feels dry, and start feeding with a diluted liquid fertilizer, about half strength every week or two. By the way, if you're finding this helpful so far, take a second to subscribe so you don't miss the rest of this series. All right, let's keep going. Now we're getting to one of the most critical transitions, Moving your indoor seedlings to the great outdoors. This process is called hardening off, and skipping it or rushing it is one of the biggest mistakes I see gardeners make. Your seedlings have been living a pampered life indoors with consistent temperatures, no wind, and gentle artificial light. If you just plop them outside into full sun and fluctuating temperatures, they'll go into shock. Leaves will get sunburned, growth will stall, and in severe cases, plants can die. Hardening off takes about 7 to 14 days, and patience here pays off big time. Here's my process. About 2 weeks before your planned transplant date, which should be after your last frost when nighttime temperatures are consistently above 55 degrees Fahrenheit, start taking your seedlings outside. Day 1 and 2, place them in a shaded, protected spot for just 2 to 3 hours, then bring them back inside. Day 3 and 4, increase the time to 4 to 5 hours and introduce a little bit of morning sun. Day 5 through 7, extend to 6 to 8 hours, with more direct sun exposure. Maybe morning and late afternoon sun with shade during the intense midday hours. During the second week, leave them out for longer periods, eventually overnight if temperatures allow. By the end of 2 weeks, they should be able to handle full sun and outdoor conditions without wilting or burning. When it's time to transplant, choose an overcast day or late afternoon to reduce stress on the plants. Dig a hole about twice the width of the root ball and just deep enough to bury the plant up to its lowest set of leaves, just like we did when potting up. Space your peppers about 18 to 24 inches apart. I find 18 inches works well if you're supporting them with stakes or cages, but if you let them grow naturally, give them the full 2 feet so air can circulate. Peppers like rich, well-draining soil with a pH between 6.0 and 6.8. If your soil is heavy clay, consider adding compost or planting in raised beds. After planting, water deeply to settle the soil around the roots. Those first few weeks outdoors are all about establishment. Your pepper plants are adjusting to their new environment and putting down roots before they focus on growing upward. Here's what you need to pay attention to during this period. Water consistently, but don't overdo it. Peppers like even moisture, about 1 to 2 inches per week, whether from rain or irrigation. I water deeply 2 to 3 times per week, rather than a little bit every day. Deep watering encourages roots to grow downward, which makes for stronger, more drought-resistant plants. Stick your finger into the soil about 2 inches deep. If it's dry, it's time to water. Mulching around your peppers is something I highly recommend. A 2 to 3 inch layer of straw, shredded leaves, or wood chips helps retain moisture, keeps the soil temperature more consistent, and suppresses weeds. Just keep the mulch a couple inches away from the stem to prevent rot issues. For fertilizing during these early outdoor months, I hold off for about 2 weeks after transplanting to let the roots establish. Then I start feeding every 2 to 3 weeks with a balanced fertilizer, or a fertilizer slightly higher in phosphorus, to encourage root development and flowering. Once you start seeing flower buds forming, which usually happens around 6 to 8 weeks after transplanting, you can switch to a fertilizer with a bit more potassium to support fruit development. I like to use a combination of granular, slow-release fertilizer at planting time and liquid feeds throughout the season. Support is another thing to think about early on. Bell peppers can get top-heavy once they start setting fruit, and branches can snap under the weight. I put my stakes or small cages in at transplant time, so I'm not disturbing roots later. A simple wooden stake with some soft ties works great, or you can use those round tomato cages. The shorter ones work perfectly for peppers. Let's talk about some common problems you might run into during these first 4 months and how to handle them. First, if your seedlings are getting tall and spindly with lots of space between the leaves, that's legginess from insufficient light. Move your grow lights closer or increase the hours of light exposure. You can also gently brush your hand over the seedlings daily. This simulates wind and encourages stockier growth. Second, If you're seeing leaves that are yellowing from the bottom up, that's usually a nitrogen deficiency. Your plants are hungry. Start feeding with a balanced liquid fertilizer, and they should green up within a week or two. Third, if your transplants are wilting during the day, but recovering at night, and you know the soil is moist, that's likely transplant shock or root damage. Give them some shade for a few days and make sure you're not overwatering. They usually bounce back. Fourth, if you notice small holes in the leaves, you've probably got flea beetles or aphids. Check the undersides of leaves for pests. A strong spray of water can knock aphids off, and row cover can protect against flea beetles. I try to avoid pesticides early in the season since I want beneficial insects to establish in my garden. Fifth, blossom drop where flowers fall off without setting fruit is usually caused by temperature stress. If nighttime temperatures drop below 55 degrees or daytime temperatures exceed 90 degrees, peppers will drop their flowers. Not much you can do except wait for temperatures to moderate. The good news is the plant will keep producing new flowers. If you follow the steps we've covered, you should avoid most of these issues and have strong, healthy plants ready to load up with peppers. Now for that bonus tip I promised at the beginning. Once your pepper plants are established outdoors and starting to branch out, pinch off the first few flower buds that appear. I know it feels wrong to remove flowers when you're trying to grow peppers, but here's why it works. Those early flowers take energy away from root and foliage development. By removing them, you're telling the plant to focus on getting bigger and stronger first. The result is a larger plant that can support way more fruit later in the season. I typically pinch flowers for the first 2 to 3 weeks after transplanting, then let the plant do its thing. In my experience, this simple trick increases my overall harvest by 20 to 30%. So that's everything you need to know to take bell peppers from seed to thriving 4-month-old plants ready to produce. If you found this helpful, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next video where we'll cover everything from fruit set through harvest. Drop any questions in the comments below. I read every single one. Thanks so much for watching and good luck in the garden.